Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. As always, welcome. We're doing football. We're doing fantasy football. We're actually going to be doing um, basically narrowing it down to Fanduel. I know there are a lot of people that use DraftKings, so this won't be a DraftKings breakdown. But if you do want to take, any sort of advice from this, they're definitely there's similar concepts to DraftKings and FanDuel. The pricing is a little different. The players that I talk about are going to be a little different. But nonetheless, I think there are some similarities that if you do use FanDuel, you can definitely get away with using some of these guys. So I'm going to basically go through each position, break down who I'm looking at in that regard, and just give you some idea of who, if you're looking to fill out that FanDuel lineup this weekend for this Sunday, who I'd be looking at for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense. Give you some value plays, give you some top stacks, and that will be this episode. But first off, I will say if you're looking at quarterback, and you're not, because you have to really decide where are you going to spend your money, because you only have a limited amount of money. And the thing is, normally I like to go value and I get burned because of it. But when it hits hard. And I've had that in the past. Justin Herbert is somebody who is now expensive, who I'm about to bring up. But Herbert's somebody back when he was 7,500. I was all over Justin Herbert's value because this guy consistently is throwing touchdowns, and a lot of them. Plus, he can run the football, so that gives you some extra points there. But kind of moving into it, Justin Herbert, 8,500. That is his price tag. He's expensive. He's one of the most expensive. He's not Aaron Rodgers, but he's right up there. The reason he's so expensive is, well, he is pretty much a no-brainer in fantasy. He's averaging first. He's literally first in fantasy points per game per FanDuel. He's going up against the Jets in his home. You look at the weapons he has. They have now announced that Kalen Ballage will be the go-to back moving forward, and we'll talk about him later on. But it's kind of hard to throw him out of the water. Look, the defense hasn't been great for the Chargers, but you're not having to buy in the defense. You're not picking if the Chargers are going to beat the Jets or not. It's very simple. All you need, at the end of the day, all you need is Justin Herbert to get his job done with guys like Keenan Allen, with guys like Mike Williams, with guys like Hunter Henry and Jalen Guyton. And ultimately, I believe that will happen. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. If you don't want to spend that much money, I have some other guys that I would bring up. Lamar Jackson against Tennessee is a very enticing matchup. It shouldn't be this way, right? Tennessee was supposed to have a much better defense, in my opinion, with Vrabel. They added Jadeveon Clowney, who just went to IR. It just hasn't been their season on defense, and they've definitely been a disappointment. But they're giving up a ton of yards. They're giving up those big explosive plays deep down the field. I believe they're fourth in the league at giving up explosive plays, which is past 20 yards or more. So when you look at this, Lamar Jackson is fourth in fantasy points per game, and he has a great matchup against Tennessee. And, he's most likely, he's a guy that, they have a hard time in general on defense. And, one of the hard things that they have is stopping the run. Lamar Jackson's somebody that can run all over them. And hate to break it to you, but running backs running quarterbacks are more valuable than anything because, Herbert runs, but he doesn't score touchdowns the way Lamar Jackson does. And when you're throwing touchdowns in FanDuel, that's 4 points per touchdown. That's not 6. When you're running for a touchdown, that's 6. So Lamar, in that case, becomes an interesting option. 8,400 in a must-win game against Tennessee. Moving on, though, we have 8,000 here for Ben Roethlisberger in Jacksonville. This is the first road game on the slate of these these quarterbacks I'm bringing up. Big Ben is 6th in fantasy points per game. He has a very juicy matchup against Jacksonville. And don't get me wrong, CJ Henderson and that secondary has shown, Andrew Wingard out there. Clay Brooks, they've shown that they can, be something. They flashed, but and honestly, they played well against Aaron Rodgers and company. But at the end of the day, I don't expect the Jaguars to play the way they did against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I don't expect them to be like that against the Steelers team. First off, the Steelers are going to punish Jacksonville with their defense. But second, Jacksonville, they can stop the run for the most part, but they are going to have a hard time stopping a passing attack that boasts four really good receivers. First off, Juju Smith-Schuster. Then you have, Chase Claypool, who's going to be a superstar. Deontay Johnson, who's not far from him, and James Washington. That's not even including Eric Ebron. So when you look at that, there's a lot of weapons here for Ben. I like him as a potential stack here. I'm looking at Ben Roethlisberger against the 26th ranked defense, and last week against the 26th ranked defense, the Cincinnati Bengals, he had his best game. He almost had 30 points in fantasy, and he hasn't had that all year. So I think he's really starting to find his stride. And, he's been good all year, but I think now he's starting to hit that elite category where he can go off. And against the 30th ranked defense against quarterbacks, I'd like his chances for sure. So he's a great pick. 8,000, you save 500 by not playing Justin Herbert. You play kind of a similar situation, a really good quarterback that can kind of throw it all over a really bad defense and matchup. But then the next one here is my value pick, and it's probably the one I'm going to go with in the majority of my, my teams that I'm going to make, my lineups. Kirk Cousins against Dallas. Now, I know what you're thinking. Kirk Cousins, he has not been good this year. He's been very inconsistent, not reliable, so why on earth am I going to risk not getting a 20-point game out of my quarterback? I'll tell you why. Well, this is a 7,100 quarterback. So, yes, he's priced accordingly for how much he's struggled. But at the end of the day, this is a big value play. Cousins is 15th in fantasy points per game, but he has a golden matchup against the Cowboys. The weapons are really starting to play better as of late. You look at Justin Jefferson this season, Adam Thielen. I'm really a big fan of what Dalvin Cook's been doing. He's pretty much been automatic. So I think, everything working with Irv Smith and, you have Kyle Rudolph, of course. I feel good about Cousins versus the 21st ranked defense against quarterbacks by, Fanduel. And here's the thing, they are win now mode. We need to win a bunch of games to even make the playoffs mode. Even though there's 7 teams making the playoffs in each conference, Minnesota finds themselves, on the outside looking in. So is this going to work for Minnesota? Who knows? Are they going to be able to make the playoffs? Who knows? But I'll tell you right now, Kirk Cousins is starting to play some good football, and I don't think that is a surprise. This defense has been, pretty good against the run this year. They've been pretty stout, and I got to tell you, I'm really feeling good overall. Kind of looking at everything, I'm feeling good about Kirk Cousins in this one and that stack with the Minnesota Vikings. So I got to tell you, when I look at the quarterbacks, there's a lot to like this week. Honorable mention, I'd say Matt Ryan. I think Matt Ryan has a great matchup against the Saints because I know the Saints are a good defense, but I'm not as high on Taysom Hill as a lot of people are, and I think this is a good opportunity for the Falcons, who are playing some really good football as of late. They're now healthy with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage, at the receiver position. Plus, you have Hayden Hurst having quite a productive season, so I feel good about Matt Ryan as an honorable mention, but he is a little bit more than Kirk Cousins, so I decided to omit him from the list of quarterbacks that I have. But I would say honorable mention goes to Matt Ryan. But moving on, running backs here. We have $10,500. Dalvin Cook. I don't care. Put a 13 tag on him. I am taking Dalvin Cook. Look, first in fantasy points per game for running backs. He's got a good matchup against Dallas, and he's really worth every penny at this point. He's had games where he almost had 50 points in a game. He's been very productive. He is probably the most explosive running back this season. He's up there with Kamara, with Christian McCaffrey being out. He's really taken over the mantle there as the top fantasy running back. So this guy has an opportunity to, really get you 20 to 30 points at the running back position. But here's the problem if you don't play somebody like him. There's going to be quite a big amount of ownership with him. And I think that's the thing. When you're playing in tournaments, you have to keep in mind if you're going for that $1 million and Dalvin Cook has a game where he scores 47 points, you're done if you don't have him. You're done. Kiss that goodbye. And if you're going for that $1 million, tournament, you're going to need to have that guy in your lineup. And I like this matchup against Dallas. I think that they are going to be able to score all over them. And personally, Dalvin Cook for me is going to be in every lineup the rest of the year. I don't think there's a price tag that will deter me from playing him. And if you play, think of it like this. If you ever played DFS basketball and you remember when Giannis Antetokounmpo was around 13 to 14,000, you were still playing him because he was so dominant and he was guaranteed to give you at least 60 to 70. That's kind of where we're at about Dalvin Cook right now. He's hit this big territory. It's not quite Christian McCaffrey 2019 territory, but it's big enough, and I honestly think it's a good value for him at, 10,500. I'll take that. Moving on, 9,700, we have Alvin Kamara versus the Atlanta Falcons. Like we were just talking about Matt Ryan, that game is going to be very interesting. That game has a lot on the line. The Saints really need to continue winning with Breeze out. He broke ribs, and there's all sorts of things going on with Drew Brees right now, and we don't know if he's going to play the rest of the year, to be honest with you. They have opted to go with Taysom Hill instead of going with Jameis Winston. I have a video for that if you'd like to check it out at the end, by all means. So Alvin Kamara, second in fantasy points per game for running backs. He's got a bad matchup versus Atlanta. Atlanta's done a nice job. They've really settled down as a team that can stop the run. But here's the thing. I'm not worried about Alvin Kamara at all against the run, because here's the thing. You go up against the best run defense in the league, which is Tampa Bay. Alvin Kamara can win in all different ways. He can win out of the backfield as a pass catcher. He can win in the slot as a pass catcher. He can win as a runner. I mean, he's that good. He is like a notch below, if even, of Dalvin Cook. So I like the idea of maybe teaming those guys up this week. Plus, I am expecting first game starter Taysom Hill at quarterback to dump the ball off at will. And if that's the case, Alvin Kamara could have a 10-catch game. And, we all know what Alvin Kamara can do, yards after the catch. So, fourth-ranked defense against the running backs, I'm not worried. I'm taking Kamara here. If you're willing to spend the money, definitely worth the money. But moving on, another guy that I think is valued way too low. I think people are starting to forget about him a little bit, and that is Derrick Henry. I know it's kind of crazy to say, because when Taylor Lewan went down, it seemed like the offense got less sexy, right? The Titans in general they became the less sexy pick to win in the AFC, and there's a lot of truth to that. First off, the defense isn't great, and when you look at what Taylor Lewan brings to the table next to Roger Saffold on that offensive line, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but without, Taylor Lewan, this is not the same offense. However, I am not worried. Derrick Henry against the 9th-ranked defense against running backs. First off, 8,200 is a steal for Derrick Henry, so you have to consider that. Second, Baltimore just allowed over 100-plus yards to Damian Harris last week. And this is a desperate game for Tennessee, sitting there at 6-3. Seems like the world is starting to fall apart for Tennessee. Even though they're winning, they're not the same team, and their schedule is getting a little tougher here with this Baltimore Ravens game. Plus, they lost to the Steelers. So, these games that they lost, people are starting to question how good they really are. To me, I think this is a huge game. I wouldn't be surprised if Derrick Henry sees 30 touches. And for that reason, 30 touches at 8,200 is a really good bargain. I definitely would look at Derrick Henry this week. And then moving on, here's a value play that probably will get a ton of ownership, and I don't even know if it's worth playing. I think it might be best to fade him, but I'll say it. I'm going to, I'll throw him out there. Mike Davis against Detroit. Detroit is the 30th defense against running backs. It's a very good matchup. He's a top 15 running back in points per game. He's got Christian McCaffrey out, of course, and the desperation of the Panthers right now. Teddy Bridgewater's a game time decision, which tells me that there's a good chance, since he's practiced this week, there's a good chance that he might not play, and it might be a quarterback that wasn't taking all the first team reps. And if that's the case, then make no mistake, this Panthers offense is going to rely heavily on the run and heavily on Mike Davis, who, by the way, has looked really good this season. I've been a big fan of his game. And at 7,400, that's a good play. But I just worry about the ownership there. At 7,400, you could be looking at 50% ownership in a tournament. I don't know. If you're trying to win, if you're trying to place, go ahead and play him. If you're trying to win, I don't know if I'm playing him. Moving on, we have 6,100, Nyheim Hines against Green Bay. This is always tough to me. I hate these committee backfields, and I'm sure you do as well. 30th ranked defense against running backs. And I actually misspoke. It was 32nd ranked defense against running backs for Mike Davis, which is why his ownership will be high. Nyheim Hines is an interesting one here. He's played well as of late. It does seem as though the Colts are more leaning towards him as being the go-to guy. And I think, really good matchup here against Green Bay. They are not a great tackling team by any stretch. But the inconsistency with the Colts backfield, you have a second round pick in Jonathan Taylor, who by all accounts I'd be starting. However, that hasn't been the case. They've been going committee backfield, and Nyheim Hines has gotten the most of the work. So I like my Nyheim Hines over Jordan Wilkins. I like him over Jonathan Taylor in the short term. His pass catching ability is definitely something that I look at. And Phillip Rivers right now, he has a chance here. This is a huge opportunity for the Colts to take over this division, and they know that. This is a tough game against Green Bay, but they're at home. I like Nyheim Hines, 6,100, really good value play. I probably play him in the flex spot, but definitely if you're looking for that value running back, he's a guy that I would target. But I got two others for you, and they're the same price tag, so it's take your pick or pick them both. You have 5,800. Damian Harris at Houston, 31st ranked run defense against running backs. 17 carries per game average right now for Damian Harris. He's been used a lot. My biggest gripe with him, and I love the guy, I think he is very talented. I have him on all my dynasty teams. It's very simple with Damian Harris. This is somebody that can run for 100 yards, but he's not getting the touchdowns because, of course, Cam Newton, Super Cam, has kind of taken over in the red zone. Those options, those powers that they run. Cam Newton has been the guy punching it in the end zone. And so he's been really vulturing his running backs' fantasy production in that regard. So be prepared for Damian Harris to have a game where he goes over 100 yards against Houston, and that's it. And he gets 10 points. At 5,800 and 17 carries per game average, I'm feeling good about Damian Harris, though. I'm not loving the Cam Newton goal line opportunities. But if they let him punch it in, Damian Harris, the sky's the limit with him fantasy-wise. He could go upwards 20 to 30 points if they start letting him be the goal line guy as well. But moving on, a guy that is 100% the go-to guy, he has been named the go-to guy by Anthony Lynn in a really weird backfield in the LA Chargers. Kalen Ballage. This is somebody I loved coming out of college. He's bounced around the league a little bit, went from Miami as initially going to be the starter, then goes to the Jets. The Jets cut him. He goes to the Chargers practice squad, and now all of a sudden, it seems like the same day they announced he is the starter. So Kalen Ballage, very interesting. He's going up against his former team, so you have that rivalry, or not the rivalry, but more of the revenge factor, if you will. Again, he was named the starter. He played 70% of offensive snaps last week. I'm feeling good about Kalen Ballage at 5,800, a little bit more than Damian Harris. 26th ranked defense against running backs for the Jets. And I'm looking at the 12 points in back-to-back games for Kalen Ballage, and I'm thinking Ballage has an opportunity to really go off against the Jets here. And I like his opportunity more than Damian Harris because Kalen Ballage scores touchdowns, and Damian Harris, unfortunately, doesn't get that opportunity unless he houses it himself. So I really like Kalen Balazs here as a value play, 5,800. Seems like a no-brainer. Seems like he should 100% be in your lineup. So I'm definitely looking at him. And honorable mention, I'm just going to say it. I really like Antonio Gibson. I didn't like him enough to put him in there. But Antonio Gibson, the way he's been playing lately, I do think he's been getting more of the rock. There were some worries about, how much is this going to be a committee backfield? You have guys like J.D. McKissick and, of course, Peyton Barber, who had 2 vultured touchdowns, early in the season. He vultured from Antonio Gibson. But Gibson, the rookie, they're starting to rely on here. And, you're starting to play for pride at this point. The Washington football team is not out of the playoff hunt by any stretch. It's wide open in the NFC East. But the fact of the matter is you're starting to get to that territory, and if they don't beat, the Bengals this week, there's a good chance they're going to be playing for pride, and you're going to want to see the best out of your third-round running back. So I really do like him as an honorable mention here. If you do want to go with him, totally get that. But moving on, we have the wideouts. And here's the thing. With the wide receivers, there's some good ones this week. I do really like playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers and the Los Angeles Rams wide receivers. So that, kind of is annoying that I can't play them. As well as, Kansas City. I do really like playing them as well. So this week, since those guys are completely out of the question, of course, the other guys that are on a bye, my top guy, not value wise, but price tag wise, is Adam Thielen at 7,900. Look, I get it. He's right up there with Julio Jones, who I actually don't have on the list. But I'll say this, he's 6th in fantasy points per game for wide receivers. He's got a great matchup against Dallas, as I mentioned. You compare him with Kirk Cousins in a stack. And I got to tell you, the 30th ranked defense for wide receivers in Dallas, I've seen them get obliterated. I've seen the Falcons throw all over them. I've seen all these teams throw all over this secondary that is just abysmal. They let Byron Jones go in the offseason. It just seems like it's all been downhill ever since. So I'm not a big fan of the Cowboys secondary at all. And I mean, I don't think many people are. When you look at this secondary, I think they're easy. They're an easy pick to go up against. So Adam Thielen for me at 7,900, you stack him with Kirk Cousins, who's 7,100. I'm thinking you have a steal there. Then moving on, 7,800, Calvin Ridley at New Orleans. Here's my thing. Julio Jones is going to get a lot of play, I think. But I think Calvin Ridley has kind of been forgotten about a little bit. He had that injury kind of set him back, a game. But, I mean, he's had a really good season. He's 2nd in fantasy points per game, this year for wide receivers. It's a good matchup, as I mentioned. He's cheaper than Julio. And I'm expecting a shootout or a blowout in New Orleans. And I don't think the blowout is going to be the Saints blowing out the Falcons. I actually have the Falcons this week because I think Taysom Hill is going to be susceptible for, to turn the ball over in his first game. And I think when you look at Sean Payton, I don't think he's going to play this one safe either. I think he's going to go for it all. And because of that, the way the Falcons have been playing as of late, I think they'll get more opportunities. And I think this team prefers to throw the ball than run the ball. So I think you could see a lot of Calvin Ridley in this game. And then 7,300 goes to Terry McLaurin versus Cincinnati. You have the 26th ranked defense against wide receivers in Cincinnati. Stability at the quarterback position now with Alex Smith. I was a little concerned. Alex Smith took over, and I was wondering how this would work with Terry McLaurin's usage. But it doesn't seem like it's hurt it at all. He has 39 targets over the last 4 games. That didn't slow down with Alex Smith. He's still got 8 or 9 targets the last game. And, coming off back-to-back 90-plus yard performances, I'm feeling really good about Terry McLaurin. A lot better than I was earlier in the year. So he is definitely somebody at 7,300. We'll probably get some good play here against a Cincinnati Bengals team that is going to give up a lot of yards and did that against the Steelers last week. But, I think Terry McLaurin in this game, and as I've said, Washington needs to win this football game. He's going to be used a lot. They're going to lean on him. They're at home. So Terry McLaurin at 7,300 seems like a good deal to me. Now, Justin Jefferson versus Dallas at 6,700. I mean, I told you, I'm a big fan of the Vikings this week. He's coming off a 135-yard, 8-catch performance against a tough Chicago defense. Just looking at what they've done with Jalen Johnson and Kyle Fuller and Eddie Jackson, I just really think that defense. I think the world of that defense. So the fact that he did that against Chicago was saying something. This is a great matchup against Dallas, and I love this stack opportunity with Thielen, Dalvin Cook, and Kirk Cousins. I know it's tough to play four guys from the same team, but this is probably the week to do it if you believe in what the Vikings and what the Steelers are doing. 30th ranked defense against wide receivers. Again, to me, Justin Jefferson's had the ability to absolutely blow up, and this is probably a week that he could. Moving on, mentioned Steelers. Why don't we just name the three in a row? We have 6,500, Juju Smith-Schuster, back-to-back 18-point games. Can't say enough about him. It's a good matchup, a great stack opportunity with Ben Roethlisberger, and I'm expecting a blowout for the Steelers again in a high-octane passing attack against Jacksonville. Chase Claypool, 6,400. Just a tad below Schuster, literally $100 less than Schuster, but top 10 in fantasy points per game. Another, same thing, great matchup, high-octane passing attack. And then Deontay Johnson at Jacksonville, just like everyone else, is coming off a 100-plus yard game. It's his best game of the season. He's had some issues with injuries this season. It slowed him down, but all three of these guys have been able to produce in the same games. That's what I like. Ben Roethlisberger spreads the ball out. I'm not worried. And so if you are looking for a stack this week, I know some people are looking at James Conner and wondering the intrigue there. I don't have the intrigue. I don't think this is a game where the Steelers are going to try to run the football. They're not going to be able to. This is a game they'll be able to throw all over the place, so why would they even, hinder themselves by trying to run the football? With that being said, if you stack Juju, Claypool, Johnson, and Roethlisberger, I still think that's a good way to go. It's just like the Vikings to me. It's a good matchup this week, and those are my wide receivers to look out for. And, I'll say going into tight ends, there's one guy to me that you need to start. I don't love him. I don't think he's going to play well. But Taysom Hill at 4,500 as a tight end when he's playing quarterback is just a no-brainer to me. Now, there's going to be a ton of play because he's 4,500. So, he might have 80% ownership. It's going to be ridiculous. But here's the thing. It's the best play of the week. Tight ends don't average 10 points per game. They just don't. They're very touchdown dependent this season. So you're getting a quarterback, at worst, he'll have 8 points at worst. The fact that he's checked off as a tight end on Fanduel, I'm feeling good about playing him. Very good. He's at the very least, going to be a top 3 scoring tight end this week. But I just think he's a no-brainer against the 32nd ranked defense against quarterbacks in Atlanta. Moving on, though, Hayden Hurst. We're going to go back up the rungs here. 5,500 for Hayden Hurst. I think he is a talent. I enjoy watching Hayden Hurst, in New Orleans, 5th in fantasy points per game. He's got a good matchup. He's consistent. He's not touchdown dependent. This is somebody that will get you 6 catches for 60 yards, and you'll feel good about the performance. So I feel good about the value there you're getting. He's only 5,500. I'm sorry, I'm not touching any of the guys above 5,500. I know there's going to be people asking about Mark Andrews. I know Lamar Jackson could have a good game, and Mark Andrews could definitely benefit from that, especially with Nick Boyle after the season. But I do not like spending over 6,000 on a tight end when you have a guy at 4,500 in Taysom Hill that is going to be a top 3 scorer right now. So to me, Hayden Hurst has the opportunity to outscore Taysom Hill. I would only stick to guys that have the opportunity to outscore Taysom Hill. 5,500, also Hunter Henry. We're sticking with the HH there against you guessed it, the Jets. 6th in fantasy points per game. He's got a great, juicy matchup against the Jets. He found the end zone last week. I think it's a blowout incoming, and I love the stack with Justin Herbert, so, I'll say that. Logan Thomas at 5,200 against Cincinnati, solid tight end option. The value, I mean, I don't know if I would play him over the guys that I mentioned previously, but he's an interesting one. And he doesn't even seem touchdown dependent. The way Alex Smith's short and intermediate passing game works, I think he and his ability, his big body, and his ability to win after the catch and, grab those yards. I think he's somebody, he could get 6 catches for 40 yards and you feel good about playing him, and, saving a few bucks. And he's also a guy that you can stack with McLaurin, and God forbid if you play Alex Smith, which I don't necessarily advise. So those are the tight ends there. The defenses, you're looking at the Steelers, who are third in fantasy points per game. They've got a great matchup against the Jaguars, whether it's Luton or Minshew playing. I do like their matchup against the Jaguars. They're 5,000. So if you want to spend a lot of money, on a defense, then go right ahead. If not, I have some other options here. 4,800 Dolphins. They're playing so hot right now. Fourth in fantasy points per game. Best matchup by far against the Denver Broncos. Drew Lock is likely not going to play, so I really like the Dolphins in that one. Plus, the way that Brian Flores has been blitzing quarterbacks. We saw it with Jared Goff. We saw it, with Kyler Murray. He's had success. So I like the Dolphins here at 4,800 as well as the Steelers at 5,000. Then you have the 4,500. You have the LA Chargers. Good value. They're playing the Jets. It's not a great defense, and they've really struggled this year, but this is a good matchup. And this is one of those weeks where if you stream the LA Chargers, they could net you a pick six and a forced fumble and multiple sacks. So I like the Chargers this week if you're ever going to play them. 4,400, the Vikings. I really like the Vikings. Good value. They're playing the Cowboys. The defense has been stout against the run. And whether it's Garrett Gilbert or, you look at Andy Dalton, I don't really care who the quarterback is for Dallas. They're stout against the run, which will shut down Zeke Elliott. And I don't think, regardless of the weapons, I don't think the Vikings are going to be, getting gashed by Garrett Gilbert or Andy Dalton. So I like the Vikings for, a low value 4,400 play, or a high value, low buy, low risk. And then 4,100 is the Washington football team. And look, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, against Joe Burrow and Tyler Boyd and AJ Green and, T. Higgins, are you sure about that? And I'd say, yeah, ninth in fantasy points per game, great matchup. And, Joe Mixon is officially out probably for the year. They're at home. It's great value. You can stack them, with either Alex Smith, which I wouldn't play and I don't recommend, Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, or even the tight end Logan Thomas. So I like those defenses. I'm not saying those are the only defenses that I would ever use, but those are my favorites this week. There's a few all over the board there. And Baltimore against Tennessee could be interesting. If Tennessee's offense can't get it rolling and can't get back to where they were, then I think that's a great defense to use against them. But I do think Washington might be the defense I go with, because I do think that the second defense against wide receivers this year is going to be huge against Joe Burrow. And this could be a game where Joe Burrow is expected coming in. I know there's going to be people that just look at the Washington football team. They look at them and they're like, they're 2-7. This isn't a team I'm scared of. And what they'll do is they'll pick against them because they'll think, well, Joe Burrow's playing a bad team. But if you haven't watched, you wouldn't know, because Washington is not a bad defense. They're not a good offense, and they don't finish games. But their defense is not bad by any stretch. They have a really good secondary, an underrated secondary, and I think that is, a secondary that could definitely cause some problems for Burrow and company. And that's why I like that defense. But finishing it up here, and I appreciate you guys watching, we have top 5 stacks. This is going to wrap it up. The Vikings, Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson / Vikings defense. You can go with any of those. Hell, I'll even throw in Irv Smith there. I think Irv Smith's an interesting stream at tight end, an honorable mention. I will say with Taysom Hill on the board and the value, the sheer value of a Hayden Hurst or a Hunter Henry, I wouldn't go after him, but I wouldn't scold at you if you decide to go with Irv Smith and stream him for that stack there. The Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and Steelers defense. I mean, to me, if all of them, if you could play all 5 of them, you would, but you can't. So you'd have to pick between the 4, and I think at the end of the day, I think the defense is great, but there are so many great opportunities and great matchups that I wouldn't play the Steelers defense if you're looking to stack those 3 receivers and Ben Roethlisberger. And I absolutely would advise against playing any of the Steelers running backs. The Jaguars may not be a good team, but they're good against the run, and so I wouldn't even test that. And then the Chargers, Justin Herbert, Kalen Ballage, Mike Williams / Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry / Chargers defense. There's a lot of places you can go with that. Personally, if I had to stack 4 of them, I would go with Herbert. I'd go with Ballage. I would go with, it'd be tough, but I would go with Mike Williams because I like the fact, the Jets, I think, are more susceptible to getting beat deep. So I think you have a bigger, bigger chances with Mike Williams. And then I like Hunter Henry in the red zone. And yeah, their defense is good, a good play this week, and I love Keenan Allen. But I like, Hunter Henry and Mike Williams in this one, stacking with Ballage and Herbert. I think Ballage has a chance to blow up this week, so keep an eye on him. The 4th stack is number 4. Saints, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Taysom Hill, and Jared Cook. I didn't mention Jared Cook in the tight end slot, okay? Very interesting here. If Taysom Hill blows the doors off, I mean, you are going to probably want Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and Taysom Hill. But I don't expect that, and I think because of Taysom Hill and the fact that he has never started a game in the NFL, you have to look at, Alvin Kamara as the dump-off option. You have to look at Michael Thomas as the quick slant guy. And you have to look at Jared Cook as the security blanket. Young quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks, and that's essentially what I am going to view Taysom Hill as, a rookie quarterback. They're tend to lean on their security blanket, and I think that's an opportunity for Jared Cook, who has shown at times this season he can really, make them pay in the red zone. So if they get there, that's the guy that they'll go to. And this Saints team, before Breeze went down, they were the number 1 red zone appearing team. They're constantly in the red zone. They live there. So, if that's any indication of what this game could be, you have to like Jared Cook in that stack. But the final stack we have, surprising, it's Washington. Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and that Washington defense. If you're going to stack any of these, I'm going with Vikings. And I'm going to go with the Steelers. But those 3 at the end, Chargers, Saints, Washington, they're all interesting to me because they all could end up being the best, or they all can end up being a total fail. So it's really up to you there. How much risk do you want to put on it? Personally, I'd look at the Vikings. I feel the most comfortable with the Vikings, second most comfortable with the Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger and Kirk Cousins. I like Ben Roethlisberger more to deliver the ball all over the field, and that's why I went with 3 wide receivers and didn't think twice. But with the way Dalvin Cook is used, and as a pass catcher out of the backfield and as a running back in general, I feel good about Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins. And then you look at Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, and those guys can go over 100 together. They're both deep threats. They're both guys that can win off the line of scrimmage. They have great They have great releases. They have a great catch radius. So I feel good about that stack. That is my favorite stack this week. Let me know, guys, what you're rolling with, what your favorite stacks this week are, what your favorite players are. If I didn't mention your favorite player this week in Fanduel DFS, or, if you want to drop below, if you have DraftKings, you want to drop below how good or accurate my stuff was compared to DraftKings, let me know. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. I'll be doing this every weekend. We're going to start doing the FanDuel stuff. We're going to, start really ramping this, this channel up. I appreciate your viewership, and I appreciate you spending the last 30 or so minutes listening to me ramble on about fantasy football. So thanks again, guys, and later.